Mike, a very interesting game last night. I didn't think I was going to get sucked into that game, but I really loved it. There was so many interesting little facets to it on both sides. But I mean, I walk away from it thinking, and I looked this up last night. The Giants now against the Eagles and the Cowboys since opening day 2017 are 0-13. Wow. And, at some point you say, the rivalries hardly exist anymore. To be a rivalry, both sides have to be competent, competitive, really pretty good. And, the Giants, although I must say they showed a lot of fight, if the Giants are 31 and the Jets are 32, there is a chasm between 31 and 32 because at least the Giants can compete.
Well, no, you're right. They have a win, first of all, which makes them dramatically better than the Jets, and they don't get blown off the field every time they play. They had a close game against the Cowboys a few weeks ago. They had a close game last night, 21-10 lead late in the game. They just couldn't hold that lead, and look, that's the problem. You got to be able to close it out. And for the Eagles, it was kind of a microcosm of the way they've been the past few years. The moment you give up on them, the moment you say they're done, that's when they somehow find a way to scratch and claw their way back into it. We saw it last season. We saw it the season before. We saw it last night with the Eagles finding a way to win that game at a time when I was just ready to say, done, over, that's it. Let's hear from Carson Wentz on coming back from that 11-point deficit with only 5 minutes left to play.
What does a game like this do to your team for the rest of the season?
I mean, to answer the latter part of that question, it does a lot for us. It does a lot for our confidence, the way we've really fought to come back in the last couple of ball games to actually do it and pull out a win. It's huge for our confidence, and we know it's a divisional game, so it's huge for the NFC East as well. As far as the other question, I mean, we'd love to not be in those situations where our backs are against the wall. We left a lot of plays out there. We were in the red zone a lot and didn't score many points. So those are things we got to clean up and be better. But when our backs are against the wall and we got to make plays, I'm going to give guys all the opportunity in the world to make them.
And look, the Eagles have been very competitive in recent weeks. They gave the Steelers a very good game a couple of weeks ago. They almost came back and forced overtime against the Ravens, two of the best teams in the league. So that's what made it more stunning that they were behind last night, but it ultimately made it not that stunning, Peter, that they found a way to get it done because they have found a way to hang around. They have found a way to come back when you think it's over. And if you're going to do it against any team, you may as well do it against a bad team. You're more likely to pull it off against a bad team, and that's what the Eagles were able to do last night.
I think what we found out last night is that, the Philadelphia defense is going to keep the Philadelphia offense in the game. And last night especially, you really look at the stalwart players on that defense along with the absolute weakness of the Giants at tackle. Oh my gosh, Andrew Thomas. What are they going to do with Andrew Thomas? How can you hide him week after week? That's a real tough one for the Giants right now. And when you're the fourth pick in the draft, shouldn't you be a little stronger and a little quicker laterally? I mean, just maybe. He was awful last night, and he's been awful through the first half of this season. But Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, last night some signs of life from Vinny Curry. Those are the kinds of veteran players. And Brandon Graham making the exact same kind of play he made on Daniel Jones that he made on Tom Brady to basically sew up the Super Bowl, in 2017.
That's right. And you can count on Brandon Graham in those moments, and that was the key. And the thing about Daniel Jones, and look, before we get to the moment that Daniel Jones will never, ever, ever be able to live down, there is no clock in his head. It's not that it isn't working. It's just not there. When you're trying to drive down the field for a potential game-winning field goal, You have to have some awareness. There was no awareness. And it's not like he took a deep drop and was waiting and the clock finally ran. He took a shallow drop. And what does he expect? What do you expect when you're just barely back behind the center and you're just taking your good old time to get rid of the football and some guy comes crashing down on you, the ball comes out? There's nothing about his demeanor in that moment, Peter, that suggested he even factored in the possibility that someone might hit him.
Yeah, and with a line as leaky, as sieve-like as that offensive line, he's got to know. He's got to have more of a clock in his head. And, Mike, Daniel Jones now has started 19 games in the NFL. He has either thrown an interception or fumbled. Now, not lost a fumble necessarily. He's thrown an interception or fumbled in all 19 starts. Now, that's not indictable in and of itself. But in general, he has not yet learned the lesson of ball protection as much as he has to learn it. And I just look at this right now and say, look, it's not like the Giants are going to go out and strengthen themselves on the offensive line. They're not. But I do think that they're going to be listening. You know, I think if you call Dave Gettleman and want to talk about Evan Engram, they would listen. You know, he's been a disappointing player overall for them. But I think the Giants could be active in the trade deadline the other way. But as for Daniel Jones, I saw a lot of things that I liked last night. But the one thing I saw that I don't like is his continued carelessness in the pocket.
Yeah, and you hear all the time, we're going to work on that. We're going to make it better. We're going to find a way to fix it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I mean, sometimes it's just who a guy is. And nothing you do is going to change the fact that when he's out there in the fray, there's something missing. And there was something missing, all right, last night when Daniel Jones was trying to throw the ball with the game on the line. He just got crushed. And again, it was almost like he was surprised. Oh, yes, they sent people after me to try to keep me from doing what it is that I want to do. Like he's not a pitcher. You know, pitchers don't have to worry about somebody coming out of nowhere and knocking them down. It's kind of like that. Like, yeah, Daniel, you may get hit. You may be in a position where the ball gets knocked out of your hands. You need to be aware of that. You need to be ready for that. And nothing they've done so far has changed that. Back to the Eagles. Let's hear a little bit from Doug Peterson, because he continues to have moments where people are like, what is he doing? Is this a guy who won the Super Bowl? At least Carson Wentz doesn't have that, where people can say, is this a guy who won a Super Bowl? Because he technically didn't. Here's Peterson talking about Wentz's performance last night.
Man, I thought he hung in there. I thought he battled, face of adversity, down a couple scores there in the fourth quarter, and really hung in there. And it wasn't, maybe on the stat sheet things look good, but there's some throws and there's some decisions I think he would want back. But I tell you what, he's the leader of our team for a reason, and you saw that tonight, leading our team down there to get that the two scores late in the game. But overall, hung in there, played tough again tonight.
A decision that maybe Doug Peterson would like to have back, 4th and 3 early in the fourth quarter, down by 4 points. Hakeem Butler, his first snap in the NFL, never caught a pass. He's the guy they go to. That's the guy that Peterson has a play drawn up for. I mean, if you're looking for the element of surprise, I guess you found it, but you better be sure you're going to be able to work it out. And the guy who's a converted offensive lineman become a tight end is going to be in a position to make the catch, Peter.
Yeah, that was one of the strategic things last night that I didn't like. Not that I think they were down 14-10 at the time, and kicking a field goal would have made it a 1-point game. And so I'm sure he's figuring, who knows how many more times we're going to get the ball, blah, blah, blah. But the reason I would have kicked the field goal is it was a little bit too far to be, it wasn't 4th and a yard. And B, I think, at that point, what did you really trust about what the Eagles could do on offense? I mean, I didn't trust anything that they were doing. Now, when they started hustling and they started playing basically hurry up for the last 6 minutes, in essence, they were a lot more efficient and they chewed up yards. But At that point of the game, I didn't trust them. I would have taken the 3 right there.
Yeah, there's still plenty of time left to be played in the game. They could have, all they need is another field goal at that point. So, but it doesn't work, and the next thing you know, it's 21-10, and it just felt like it was over. It felt like it was done, and I have to give the Eagles some respect for finding a way out of that hole. Usually you don't see that happen. The Giants are the ones who blew that lead, though. Joe Judge, head coach of the New York Giants, not happy with what ultimately happened to his team. Here he is.
We can't all have one off. I can't make a bad call. Player can't say my bad. That adds up throughout the course of a game. So we just can't do that right there. We've got to coach better. We have to play better. And we got to finish the game out when we have an opportunity. We've played enough ball at this point. We should know what we have as a team. We should understand how we have to play as a team. We know we have to be a team that's got to grind out wins. We have to do things just a little bit tougher. And that's all right. We're okay with doing it that way. We put ourselves in position a lot of games now. We've got to control the things we can control, and that comes down to the penalties and the turnovers, and we have to do a better job of that as a team to make sure that we give ourselves the opportunities to capitalize on the work we're putting in.
Yeah, well, he's absolutely right, and it sure felt like it was going to work out last night. It felt like it was going to be a different vibe for this Giants team after starting off 0-5 to win on Sunday against Washington in a hard-fought game that went back and forth, and they ultimately held off Washington at the end of the game. If they would have been able to pull off that 2 wins between a Sunday and a Thursday, maybe you feel differently about them. Maybe there's a way to scratch and claw their way back into a division title conversation, especially when you're in a division like the NFC East. But not to be for the Giants. And really, what better encapsulates their season? I've resisted for as long as I could. Daniel Jones, the 80-yard run, the 80-yard non-touchdown run, the run where the guy breaks into the clear, shot out of a cannon. You rarely see it from a quarterback. And all he has is green grass in front of him. And it's fall down, go boom for Daniel Jones. It was funny, but I also felt bad for him. You never see that happen. Everybody worries about that, right? I don't want to go out there and fall down like Kramer. Well, Daniel, you fell down like Kramer.
Mike, the thing about that play, after the game, I stayed up and I listened to the, this is great. Stephon Diggs was fantastic. That was hilarious. And Mahomes, give Mahomes credit. Give Mahomes credit. I would never have been able to run that far either. But, Mike, you know what you thought of? And again, you don't want to pick on Daniel Jones because, hey, you've got pretty good athleticism to outrun a defense. So good for him. But the thing that kind of bothers you, oh my God, that's hilarious. Who did this, Mike? Mike, who did this?
I don't know. It wasn't me, but that's pretty much the night for the New York Giants. There it was. The win was in their grasp, and there goes the win probability.
The thing I was going to say is that, it's, and I don't mean to sound like I'm picking on the guy because he doesn't have a great awareness in the pocket a lot of times. But that also showed a little bit of a lack of awareness. I mean, if he even looked around slightly peripherally, there was nobody who had a chance to catch him. Nobody. And it isn't like the crowd is so loud that you can't hear anything and you can't really sense what's around you. There's barely anybody there. So that just, I don't know. That, as funny as it is and all that other stuff, and you don't want to make too much of it, but, man, you got to have a better sense of where you are if you're Daniel Jones.
Well, and it probably was the first time in his life, definitely the first time in his NFL career, that he was in a spot like that where you're breaking free and you're actually going to run that far to the end zone, and there really is no one behind me. This makes no sense. I should just fall down. But how many times have we seen a guy who breaks into the clear like that, Peter, who looks up at the video screen? We didn't see any of that. Guys rely on that video screen, and they're still running them in the empty stadiums. They surely had them on last night in a sparsely filled Lincoln Financial Field. You look up, you see that there's no one behind you. You confidently run into the end zone. There wasn't any of that for Daniel Jones. It was just hold the pieces together in the hopes that the car doesn't fall apart before it gets to the finish line. And unfortunately for Daniel Jones, the car fell apart before it got to the finish line. It ultimately wasn't consequential. They still scored a touchdown on that drive. But still, it was a moment. It was a moment at a time when the game was just boring. That was the moment the game went from boring to not boring. Just in that one moment, right? Because it was just, and last night was a strange night. It was the only night that there was a presidential debate up against a football game. And frankly, Eagles-Giants presidential debate, curious about, the fate of our nation, the future of our world. I was paying a little more attention to that than the football game at times. But once that happened, it's like, well, okay, now we got a football game here. Debate kind of boring, frankly, which is good. Boring is good in comparison to the first one. But that was the moment where it kind of grabbed your attention and held your attention on the football game. So I guess thank you, Daniel Jones, for giving us something to pay attention to and also something to talk about today.
I couldn't really watch the debate. I tried a couple of times. I flipped it over during commercials, but I don't know. There's something that is so reprehensible about our political process right now. I just couldn't get into it. Kind of glad I didn't. I'm kind of glad especially the second half of this game really made it very watchable.
Yeah, and look, the reality is 50 million people have already voted, so last night's debate, in many respects, irrelevant.
How many minds are you changing right now? I mean,
none.
really,
think about it.
Absolutely. How in the world can you be undecided? I mean, come on, tell me the truth. Unless you just woke up from 4 years asleep, how are you undecided?
Definitely not changing the minds of the people who've already cast their ballots. That's for damn sure. It's too late for the 50 million who have already pulled a lever, punched a button, or whatever it is that you do. Oh, you fill in the little. I already voted. How do I forget? I already voted. You fill in the little square. You just make.
Isn't it amazing, Mike? By the way, that to me, I find it amazing that I think there were 123 million ballots cast in the presidential election 4 years ago, something like that. So 123 million. Now there's been already 53 million. I mean, there's still a week and a half to go before the election. I mean, how many people are actually going to vote before the election? I mean, I am.
How many are going to vote on election day? How many are going to be left to vote on election day? That's the key.
I know.
They may have. Everyone may have voted by then. So, still many ballots to be cast in the NFC East. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles with that win at 2-4-1. 2-4-1 is actually better than 2-4. They're in first place over the Dallas Cowboys. When you're under 500, a tie boosts your winning percentage, and winning percentage may be relevant this year. Let's hope it isn't. We'll be talking about that dynamic coming up later in the hour. But for now, the Philadelphia Eagles are your first place team, and that tie that they had with the Bengals earlier this year, that is going to avoid a lot of headache and a lot of heartache and a lot of mathematical effort that we otherwise would need unless one of the other teams is involved in a tie, because I think that tie's either going to just give it to them or they're just going to miss out on it, but we're not going to have to worry about any tiebreakers this year in the NFC East, Peter.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Mike. And I think the Eagles are clearly the best team in the division. I don't see how. I mean, I think Dallas is going to go to Washington this week and lose. The thing that the Cowboys are most vulnerable, the place where they're most vulnerable, on the offensive line, that's where Washington is going to have a great advantage on their defensive front against Washington's offense or against Dallas's offensive line. But I also think in general that when you look at this division this year, it's going to spur a conversation. And it should spur a conversation that if you make the playoffs by winning your division, that it should not guarantee you a home playoff game. And that is a rabbit hole that we could go down for about an hour. But I simply cannot believe that, the NFL this year, and really, I hope it isn't like I'm rooting against the Eagles or for them to lose every week. I hope that a team at 6-9-1 wins the division, or 5-10-1 wins the division, and gets a home game. And then I hope the fifth seed in the NFC playoffs is like 12-4, because it'll just point to the absurdity of giving a team a home game in the playoffs for winning the worst division in recent history.
But, Peter, there's nothing wrong with hoping for that because the NFL will only deal with a situation when it does create a ridiculous outcome like that. Even though the league knows that it can, it won't do anything about it until it actually does. That's why I keep hoping that in a Super Bowl, someone fumbles at the 2-yard line and the ball goes forward and goes out of the end zone, and the casual fan is like, wait, why does the other team have the ball on the 20 now? That's the only way they're ever going to address that rule that I despise. It has to happen in a big spot. It has to happen in a spectacular way. It has to be 6-9-1, hosting 12-4 before the league says we need to do something about it. And look, Peter, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole either, in part because Sims and I have been talking about it throughout the week, and people probably get sick of hearing it. But I would like to go back to 3 divisions per conference, the way it was prior to 2002, because I think if you go 3 divisions per conference, you really do have meaning in winning a division. You can say, all right, you're the best of 5 or 6 teams, you get to host a playoff game. The other people are wild cards. Most of them are going to have to go on the road. That's kind of the way it works out. With 4 teams per division, you're always going to have this possibility, if not reality, that you get 4 crappy teams that happen to be in the same division. And it seems like we see something like this far more often than we don't.
There's 2 reasons why that'll never happen. It might happen in 50 years. It's not going to happen in the foreseeable future. Number 1, the NFL doesn't want 4 more franchises. And I assume you would want every team to have the same number, every division to have the same number of teams.
Why?
So
how many years was Peter, how many years was it 4, 5, and 4 per conference? Why not 5, 6, and 5?
Okay, so if you're comfortable having a different number of teams in the division, that's another issue. But I'm telling you, the reason why they won't do this anyway is because owners and GMs and club presidents like the fact that you only have to beat 3 teams to win a division. You know, they like that. They like that, hey, we've won the NFC East or whatever division there is. They love that. And it really doesn't matter if it doesn't create the most just outcome, in the course of a season. It just matters because then you can put on your resume, we won this division X number of times.
You're absolutely right, though. You're not going to find a single owner who is going to give up the possibility of a 1-in-4 chance to win a division. So there's 8 divisions instead of 6. Nobody says, boy, a division title is meaningless in the NFL because there's 8 divisions instead of 6. I mean, under that math, let's have 16 divisions, 2-team divisions. Hey, division champion. But that's the thing. You're not going to have teams willingly give up an easy path to a division championship because, and Jerry Jones said it this week, it's like manna from heaven that the Cowboys are in this bad division where they can pull the inside straight and win the division, even though I don't think they will. It's a lot easier for them there than it would be if they were in the NFC West or the AFC North this year. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's going to take something like 4-12 hosting 13-3 to create the outcry necessary, or outcry as the case may be, to get this changed. Even then, you're going to have to get at least 24 owners to say, nah, we don't like having a 1-in-4 chance each and every year of winning a division and hosting a playoff game. And I don't think that's ever going to happen anytime soon or, like you said, in 50 years.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.